Before we start, two quick announcements. There are no fire drills scheduled for this evening, as far as I'm aware, but should the fire alarm go off, please leave the building by the entrance that you came in, which will be down there, or exceptionally, it may be over here. Second point, please ensure that mobile phones are switched off, otherwise it's the customary £10 fine. And remember that these meetings are recorded, so whatever is said is accessible by members of the public. Thank you. I now ask Canon Michael Webber to say prayers.
O God our Father, we pray for the members of this council, the officers and our chairman, Councillor David James, remembering also his wife Janet in our prayers. At a time of rising tension in the world, we pray for world leaders and for the pursuit of peace. As we prepare for Christmas, give us a sense of peace in our lives and the assurance of your love as seen in the coming of Christ, who shows us the way to live and serve you. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Right, move on to the agenda. First item is the signing of the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of October 2017. I have your agreement to sign those minutes as a true and accurate record of what took place on that occasion.
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 3, apologies for absence.
Councillor John Shepherd, Councillor Bob Cratchit and Councillor Fabian Gray.
Are there any other apologies? Thank you. Item 4, declaration of members' interest. If any member has an interest in any of the items coming up before us this evening, they may declare them now or before the item is considered. Yes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Recommendation SG 61 1702, New Homes 2, Project Approach, a recommendation involving future housing groups. I'm a member of their Insight Committee, which is an advisory committee with regard to a housing association, and therefore feel it appropriate that I should declare an interest first of all, and withdraw myself for the totality of that debate, as long as somebody reminds me to come back in afterwards.
Thank you. Any other declarations? Right, we move on to item 5, Chairman's announcements. I have circulated a list of various engagements since we last met. I won't go through each and every one of them, but before I come on to that, I'd like to remind members that we are having a charity dinner and dance on the 24th of March next year at Highgate House at Cretan. I have to let Highgate House know the numbers sometime in January because we've negotiated a special rate. It won't be a rubber chicken do, it will be beef on the menu, I can assure you, as well as an alternative. But we have negotiated a special rate, and they need to know numbers quite soon, and we will need to know numbers as to whether we've got sufficient to be able to go ahead. We booked the John Cleveland band, which is a very, very good local band. I think it's 13 or 14 pieces band for the dance. And we've had a number of raffle prizes donated at this stage, so it should be a very good evening. So that's Saturday the 24th of March, and please, if you want tickets, please book them as soon as possible. I'll ask Fiona Rye to send out a reminder in the next few days, but together with more report. Then I move on to the various engagements I've had last month, and I'll just mention a few of them. Try to get the list. I attended several dinners and balls, East Northants, Kettering, Northamptonshire County Council, that one. A number of AGMs of charities. One of the most enjoyable was the Caring and Sharing Trust annual Christmas sing-along party at Cookno, or Cono as outsiders call it, to the side of Northampton. And this is a charity which helps those with adults with a learning disability. And it was extremely enjoyable. Not only seeing the people sing, but being involved with them in the singing. Some of the chairman of other councils, and including Andrew Ledson, the MP for South Northampton, taking part and planning out of it. It was very enjoyable. Another little charity that is worth a mention is the Children Come First annual general meeting, where a group of people help with families that were split up and arranging the what I call the McDonald's visits, if you like, the meetings. It's a very, very important work, and they managed it on a shoestring, believe me, I was quite surprised. I was very pleased to attend that. Usual Remembrance Day parade, Armistice Day service, and a cabaret evening in Rushden, hosted by East Northants, where they had a comedian and who could sing as well. And I was amazed. He did 3 songs by Roy Orbison, absolutely note and pitch perfect. You close your eyes, you would have thought it was Roy Orbison singing. And then he did 3 songs by Neil Diamond, exactly the same, absolutely perfect. Now, I mean, I would watch television and go to shows like the rest of them. I haven't seen anybody do it exactly like that. It was almost as if he had a record in the background. But I assure you, it did. It's very good. I understand he's coming back next month to do Elvis Presley. But it was extremely enjoyable. Comedy got a little bit risky at one stage, so I was on with it. Other events are as in the schedule that's been distributed to you. But I've had a good time anyway, and I've got quite a few engagements this next month, both as chairman of the council and in a private capacity. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is questions under Council Procedure Rules numbers 10 and 11. And I have a question here from Mr. Alan Nape, who I understand isn't present this evening. No? So therefore I'll read his question, and I'll read it verbatim as it is here. At the last meeting of full council on the 5th of October 2017, the behaviour of some members was abysmal, but there was one incident in particular struck me as not befitting on behaviour of elected members. The incident was when Councillor Osborne openly mocked an opposition councillor's motion to refer to residents of Daventry as citizens. I don't think anything about this motion was unreasonable. Personally, I think it's a bit odd to refer to residents as customers, but I can see how this could be interpreted as being a bit left-wing. If I were to have made the motion, I would have requested the term resident be used. However, for a member to raise an amendment which they do not want to be passed in frankly ridiculous and led to a waste of council's time, if he didn't agree with it, why not say so, instead making fun of a legitimate motion? Does the council leader agree that the councillor should make a full apology for wasting council time and showing disrespect to a fellow councillor?
Thank you, Chairman. I want to thank Mr Nate for his question and for his views on that particular issue at the last council meeting. We have debated as council chairman, and I don't actually agree with him, and therefore I have to say I don't agree, so therefore I don't agree with his actual assumption of that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. We then move on to answer questions from members of the council, if any. And I have one question here from Councillor Alan Hills.
Thank you, Chairman. At the last full council meeting, during the debate on the women's cycle trial, Councillor Randall, the leader of the Labour group, stated she knew of businesses who had taken on extra staff and had lost money as a result. This was, of course, to me quite a concern, and I requested Councillor Randall to supply me with the relevant information so I could contact the affected businesses. So far, I have heard nothing. I would like to ask Councillor Miller, has he received or been made aware of any businesses affected in this way?
No.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I want to thank Councillor Hills for his question. I can say I personally have not been made aware of any businesses affected in the way that Councillor Hills has described. But obviously, to be fair, I did contact Councillor Randall yesterday, who actually allegedly, according to Councillor Hill, made the point. And I wanted to let Councillor Randall know, in advance of this meeting, that the question is going to be asked. And hopefully, Councillor Randall, if you so wish, Chairman, can maybe add some light to the question Anna Hills has asked, because unfortunately I can't. Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, Chairman. I believe under the Constitution, the question gets asked to the leader or portfolio holder, so therefore I can't respond.
Correct.
Would you like to reply to that, Councillor?
Yeah, I'm genuinely sorry that Councillor Randall can't respond to this question, because, as I said, it does raise his concerns. And what I quite frankly can't comprehend, and I'll say this to you in all honesty, that where we have an event that brings in a lot of footfall into the town, how businesses can lose money. Beggar, if I get the information, I would like to ask them, first of all, did they attend any of the briefing meetings? Secondly, did they promote themselves properly? And that goes to my background in marketing. Did they market themselves properly? And what they found, the real reason was for not making anything, in fact losing money. That's where I come from, because myself, and I know Councillor Howard, we're very interested because we would like to talk to these people. And it's a shame we can't get a response to that. Thank you.
Councillor Miller, would you like to respond to that?
No, Chairman. So I think Councillor Hills has responded.
Thank you. Item 7, reports of committees. These have been included in a package and duly circulated. Do I have your agreement, please?
Really?
Item 8, recommendation of committees, page 69 to 72. To 72. First of all, SG 56 1701 Brownfield Register. Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Chairman. Recently, the government introduced a new regulations that requires all local planning authorities, of which this council is one, to draw up a register of parcels of previously developed land suitable for development for residential purposes. It's interesting to note that the regulations don't actually define what suitable for residential development actually means, but that's part of the course. This is commonly known as the Brownfield Register, Chairman, and we obviously have to comply with this request, and I think we have to do that before the end of the year. What this will mean is that any piece of land which is known of as having been previously developed and might be suitable for residential development must be placed on this register, which is then available to anybody to look at. There are further provisions for sites which might pass further investigation and examination as being marked as effectively having permission in principle, requiring further planning detail, of course, before any actual development can take place. Following that introduction of the new system, we're recommending that the arrangements set out in the report which went to strategy group to prepare and maintain that register be agreed, Chairman.
Thank you. Do I have a second for that? Adam Brown. Councillor Brown.
Nothing further to add, Mr. Chairman.
We move on then to
Agreed. Bit premature. The food is coming, Chairman.
I'm aware of it. We move on to SG 56-1706, Local Development Scheme for Daventry District. Councillor Chandler.
Thank you again, Chairman. The Local Development Scheme for Daventry District is effectively a project plan making clear the details of a timetable for the development of the district in accordance with the local plan. Part of that was the completion of a Part 2 local plan, which initially had been thought to be required to be in two separate parts, one as the Countryside and Settlement local plan Part 2A, and the second as the Gypsies, Travellers and Travelling Show People local plan Part 2B. More recently, since that was drawn up, the government have redefined travelling communities to the extent that we find that it is not necessary to have a separate plan for the Gypsies, Travellers and Travelling Show People, and so we're seeking approval for a revised local development scheme which will develop a combined Part 2 local plan, which will probably be known as the Countryside and Settlements Local Plan Part 2.
Councillor Daventry.
I would like to second this item and to congratulate the new document which is for consultation at the moment and has been around all the villages or the main villages. Officers were there to reply to the public, and I went to Leslie and it was well attended. But also for all the rural area, the news of the local plan regarding gypsy and travelling population will be very welcome. And for our ward especially, I already have a positive comment about it. Thank you, sir. And I second that motion.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Moving on then to the page, SG 61-1701, disposal of 23 Pine March, Daventry. Councillor Ford.
Thank you, Chairman. This particular item had a very robust debate at strategy, and finally we came up with a recommendation which you have before you. To approval is granted to dispose of 23 High March. Every effort will be made to associated arrangements for the food bank operation of the current tenant as described in the report, Chairman. I ask for the Council's recommendation to be approved. Thank you.
Councillor Gilford.
I'd like to second that motion. As Councillor Paul referred, there was a debate strategy. The amendment was, there was an amendment to the original proposal to ensure that every effort was made to try and make associated arrangements for feedback.
Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I spoke against this at strategy meeting. I felt that the papers really didn't give a lot of background. At the moment, the Vineyard Church that operates the food bank does so with its congregation. They were located on a different site in Daventry that was due to be demolished. So they met with the chief exec and I think it was Simon Bowers, and they were offered this property that they're currently in on a rent-free basis. Yeah, rent-free basis, but then they would, because I think the building was in a bit of disrepair, so they could have it rent-free if they carried out repairs within this building. It is a large building, but obviously the food bank has grown and grown because of the amount of people now using it. So obviously, you know, they were quite settled in there. They were offered that building because nobody really wanted it at that time. It was going to be more stable for them. Obviously, I think it's 4 years down the line now that they're being told now that obviously there's a buyer for that unit and they need to move again. But this won't be at rent-free. This will obviously be at a cost. And obviously, as they are a religious group, they don't get funding isn't available unless they become a charity, I do believe. So they will go from providing this service to local residents having to pay no rent to suddenly finding it's 10,000, is it in the report, on a building that is very small. It would be suitable for the food bank, but not large enough for all the other bits that they do within the community. I did bring up that they also operate a scheme where they've got computers there, so you know, if people are out of work or looking for work, they can go there. There's somebody always available to help them. I did know Councillor Paul did say that is available in the library. Yes, it is. But you go in the library, there's often no one there to sit and help you. And sometimes these people are quite, not always vulnerable, but they're of that, if they haven't got a lot of confidence. So when they go in somewhere, like the Vineyard, it makes them feel safe, and they've got someone there. They'll sit there all day. You know, if somebody's there, they'll sit all day with them trying to do a CV. You won't get that in the library. You don't get that in other organisations. So it's not just about the food bank that they operate. They do different things. You know, they do some really good work. So for me, for them to be moved out of this building into a building that's not suitable for what they do, it's way on the other side of town. A lot of the users to the food bank come from the opposite end of town. It's too far to carry heavy bags back. Some people, you know, have got a car, but it's also looking at the sort of people that use the food bank, because at one time people used to think people that use the food bank are just people on benefits. Well, most people that use that food bank are working people. So many people now don't get paid any sick pay. So if they're off work for a week sick, or they have to go in hospital for an operation, they've got that choice of either paying their rent or mortgage or buying their food. And that is when they often get referred to the food bank. So for me, it's vital to the residents for this town. You know, and as a council, we've got the well-being of our residents at heart. And this is something that if it went to the point, because the Vineyard Church, you know, if they can't afford that money, that food bank's gone. You know, if that food bank goes and all those residents haven't got that, what sort of districts are we going to become? Are we going to have people just starving? I mean, we're getting more and more homeless people now around the town, and it just saddens me. So, you know, I would like to see that if we did move them into a different building, that it be on the same basis that it is now, on a rent-free, especially for the food bank side. I'm sure as a church for that part, they could pay, but I don't feel that they should have to pay to operate a service that residents use. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Paul.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just to come back, it is a very emotive subject. I, for one, don't like doing what I'm doing. However, we have to face the facts of life, and the facts of life being that the premise has been unable to be let for various reasons, and the premise will be put up for sale. However, it says within this report to the council that the approval is granted to dispose of, but it also says every effort will be made. Now, in the report that went to strategy, again it said every effort will be made. Now, when the Vineyard Church moved out of Daventry Garage, which when Councillor Randall, I beg your pardon, referred to, yes, we made every effort. And then it was moved onto High March. So, all in all, they've had about 6 years rent-free. They do a good job. I don't have any axe to grind about that. I'm a trustee of Daventry and District Citizens Advice Bureau, so I know the worth. I'm also a trustee of the Daventry Consolidated Charity. And a Christian, believe it or not. So I hear all the emotive remarks. However, I come back to the same statement that every effort will be made to rehouse the food bank. Now, at Daventry Garage, it was the wrong end of the town for some people. At Southbrook, it was the wrong end of the town for other people. Anywhere else in the town will be the wrong area for other people. And I also know of people from our villages who have travelled into Daventry to use that food bank. Chairman, I ask the council to approve the recommendation. Thank you.
Husband, sorry, Councillor Richard.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bull has told us that every effort will be made to find a solution to this, but every effort is not a guarantee. If you're moving house, you don't sign the completion documents until you've found somewhere else to move to. I worry for the reasons that Councillor Randall has given about what the effect of the loss of the food bank, or the food bank in its present form, would be in exceptionally needy places, exceptionally needy people in Daventry. But I also worry about the reputational damage to Daventry as a council and Daventry as a place if its food bank ceases to exist because this council will not put up the small amount of money or accept the small costs that there might be involved in delaying the sale of this property until there is some solution, that there's some other place that we can provide for the food bank and its related services to continue its work. I appreciate and I support the principle that Daventry Council, that no council should be involved in providing funds to a religious organisation. But there are plenty of ways in which this council can find to support the work, the excellent work that many of these organisations actually do. There are methods by which, yes, you can say that there must be a rent, but recognising that part of the space that they are occupying is going to need to be used for the charitable purposes of a food bank and for the assistance that it gives to people who are there trying to deal with their benefit claims or whether they are seeking work. Surely there has got to be a way in which this council can support that. We are not talking about a fortune at all compared with the budgets that we deal with.
Right.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it'd be useful to provide an update as to the support that's being provided. Every effort is being made to assist the female church in finding a new location for the food bank. At this current time, the premises that was mentioned in the first report has been declined, but the Vineyard Church is actively looking at the town centre premises. It's actually, they put it out on their Facebook page. They're consulting their congregation and their users. So the way things are at the moment, it looks very positive that we will very soon be able to report to members that a win-win solution has been found.
Thank you. Yeah, just to come back on that, I am aware that they have seen a property in the town centre, but again, I think that rent is even more expensive. So, you know, to me, what I would like to see is that we give them the same as what they've got now to operate that part of the food bank. I don't see why they should have to pay rent to operate a service that is effectively doing us a favour. So, you know, if they have got to move out, do it the same as what they're receiving now. Do it on a rent-free basis for that part of their service. They can pay their part for their church part, but on the food bank, I think it should be rent-free.
Yeah, there is no doubt the food bank is important to some of the vulnerable residents. Some of those of our residents have been disproportionately affected by austerity, by social events, etc. Well, what concerns me is just the narrative here. You know, we've heard from council officers that we may have a win-win situation. The council itself is working proactively with this organisation to provide a food bank. Yet all we hear is this negativity. I think we are actually preempting, or we almost want this disaster to happen from some of the words said, when in fact, quite possibly, we are going to have a food bank. And what's more important to me is that every effort is a way of scrutinising exactly what the council have done. You can't hide, it's very transparent. What has the council done in its efforts to help these people? We've heard from officers that it looks like it could be a win-win situation. So let's see what happens, right? Let's be positive about it, and let's support this council in ensuring we get the food bank we need for the vulnerable people of our town.
Thank you. I think we've given Councillor Paul, would you like to say
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to thank Councillor Alder for his words, absolutely excellent. I think it's worth noting also that last year this council gave out £150,000 in grant funding. No small amount. The portfolio holder for communities actually put forward a report not so long ago to increase that funding amount, which was passed by this council. I do know that Tim Cantwell, who looks after the funding in the council, is working with the Vineyard, as is our officers. And I say again, every effort is made to come to the right conclusions. I don't stand here saying every effort is made if when I turn my back I change my mind. That doesn't happen. Chairman, I put this yet again to the council for recommendation.
Thank you. The recommendation has been proposed and Stu seconded. Are members in agreement?
Agreed.
We move on there.
We're against.
Oh, three against. Right.
Please come with me.
We now move on to SG 61 1702, New Homes 2, Councillor Auger, temporary left the chamber, whilst this waiting to be discussed. Councillor Paul.
Thank you again, Chairman. The recommendation you have before you that a conditional sale of Middlemore Site 8 East to Futures Housing Group, as described in the report, is approved. And one of the questions that was asked during the strategy group was about affordable housing. And the words from 4.2 in the strategy report, the proposal is that Futures deliver a scheme of market housing with a policy-compliant affordable housing contract. Those are the rules to start off with, and those are the ones that will be complied with. I'll put this to council, Chairman.
Do you have a seconder for this? Councillor Campbell. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. I have got no objection to the idea of Futures developing this site in Middlemore. But I wonder whether, in seeking a deal with Futures, nearby Middlemore, the council has got the problem of the Daventry State, I can never remember what it's, that group anyway. The company that is wholly owned by this council for the purpose of, of offering houses, rented houses in Middlemore, that we have now decided to dispose of. There is a lot of concern amongst residents as to what their future is going to be. There was hope that, I understand, that the whole of Stoneacre Close area would be sold off to a housing association or some similar body. Now there is the danger that these may be sold house by house to individual private landlords, which is very alarming for some of the people who are there. And I just wonder if this is not an opportunity, given that the plots are almost adjacent, for doing getting some sort of agreement whereby Futures might take over these other homes as well. And I would like to ask whether that has been explored or whether it can be explored.
Simon Byrne.
Thank you, Chairman. The simple answer is yes. Futures made an offer for those houses which was well below the market value, and therefore the offer has been declined.
Wish to respond? Councillor Paul.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I welcome the report, obviously. I welcome it for two reasons. There is a contractual number of affordable housing, particularly in an area where we are going to build a retirement village. And I think we have a win-win situation whereby we are building affordable housing next to employment. So I would like the council to approve the recommendations, Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Osborne.
No, I'm just afraid to say agreed, Chairman.
Right, well, we have a proposer and a seconder. Are we all in agreement?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Leave him out there.
Kick it out.
Order returns to the chamber. The next item is SG 62-1701, council tax reduction. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. This has come around quite quick actually already. We normally have a lot of debate early in the evening. So this is the first of mine. This obviously relates to the recommendation coming from the strategy group on the 16th of November. Very simply, it's that the final scheme for the council tax reduction 2018-19, we sat as option 1 if has agreed strategy. And of course, option 1, take back to the original consultation, was based on keeping the rate as it is currently, which is 20%. You've got the paper in front of you in strategy, and I'd like to recommend that to council. Thank you.
Do you have a second? Councillor O'Brien.
No further comment at this stage.
Anyone wish to speak to that? Councillor Ritchie.
I would like, Chair, to be noted that the no change scheme, as was pointed out at recent meetings, is not a no change scheme at all. It's a change to keep the low rate at 20%, but that is 20% of a council tax that has increased by what, 5%? And I recall saying more or less the same things a year ago, but it had also been up by 2.5%. 2.5% increases gives you 11% as the cumulative increase. People's benefits haven't gone up by anything like that amount. We are in the week in which the government's Social Mobility Commission, their commissioners have resigned because of increasing inequality and the fact that the government doesn't appear to be doing enough about it. And here we are as local government, and we are simply saying that we are going to add to the problems of people who are facing hardships. Again, the amount of money is not great. It wouldn't be great to say that, look, that what we will not change is the actual amount that people are required to pay, rather than talking about the percentage. And I just feel that unless we can do this, I just hope that some of us will be able to reflect on it as we eat our Christmas dinners.
Do you wish to respond, Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Chair. I think my understanding still is 20% is still 20%, even though it's 20% or 80% of a slightly higher number. It's really quite fascinating to me, actually, as I take on this role, that there's kind of like the notion of a money tree here. So we have the previous agenda about High March, which is basically the tenant there for several years, having no rent to pay. Okay, let's carry on giving them no rent, then we get to this item, and this is not enough. I think we have to put some movements in the ground, say 20% is a reasonable fee. It's been gone out to consultation, and it was accepted by those who have consulted. So 20%, that is basically a little bit of inflation, which pays for those things that we're doing and the services we have to run. And of course, as you know, we're also collecting this money also on behalf of the county as well. So it's about the services we're delivering, and that's why 20% is a small increase in real terms to those people as well. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do acknowledge Councillor Rich's point that the 20% is still requiring people to pay a slightly higher council tax bill than they did the year previously. But if we were to follow Councillor Rich's advice and actually reduce that council tax bill or freeze it, then for every penny that, or every pound that we tell those people that they don't have to pay, that's an extra pound that doesn't go into public services, that doesn't go towards adult social care, that doesn't go towards children's services that allow the most vulnerable children in our society to be protected by our local services. So, you know, well, I think we're making absolutely every effort to find the right balance to protect both the most vulnerable taxpayers, but also the most vulnerable in our society who do need our protection.
Councillor Owen.
Yeah. So once again, the rhetoric is that we're increasing. You know, this is actually a reduction scheme to help people. And I don't like the way we package things up as a negative, when in fact we're actually trying to do the best for our people. And this is a sensible proposal, all right? It allows the most vulnerable in other ways to get the services they need by ensuring we have the funds to operate, not only us, but also the county to operate to help those within our community.
Councillor Rand.
Thank you. Yes, I brought up the same thing that Councillor Ritchie did at strategy, and obviously at one time these residents were paying no council tax, and then when we brought in that first charge, it was a huge amount of money for them to find. And again, a lot of these people are working. I know many people that are on a 0-hour contract. Like I've said before, they get paid no sick, and often, you know, £3 a week or £3 a month isn't anything to the majority of us. But to some people, that it makes a huge difference on whether they actually can pay a bill or whether they can actually feed their children. And if you get out and about and you actually see some of the struggles that these people have, it is truly heart-wrenching. Thank you.
Councillor Morgan.
Chair, thank you. Obviously, that can be the case, of course. But I think by way of comparison, actually, Kettering's actually at 45% and Northampton at 35%, but Corby and South Northampton are actually at 8.5%, so actually in the middle of that range. And like Councillor Brown also said, we're still doing our best to help people, but we still have to keep control of our finances as well, so we can help all of the people and residents, or whatever we'd like to call them, across the district. Thank you.
Right. All in favour of this recommendation?
Agreed.
Any against? Next item is SG 621702, Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy Mid-Year Review 2017-18. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. Again, this one is very straightforward. Consideration was given to the Council's Treasury Management activities for the first half of the year, and it was we recommend that the Council's Treasury Management Mid-Year Review be noted, and that the proposed increases levels for counterpart investments be agreed. Essentially, it's still the same strategy about being sensible, being strict with our approach and being risk averse. And again, still keeping the money in a safe place in particular, so we don't have any issues with the access to that. So it's about being safe and prudent and risk averse, and I'd like to recommend that to Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Brown.
No further comment.
Anyone else wishing to speak? No. All in favour?
Agreed.
Next item, SG 621703, 2018-19, Capital and Revenue Budget and Medium Term Financial Plan. Councillor Chandler.
No.
No.
Chair, that's me. I know you're quite surprised to see me stand up several times before the council meeting. Chair, for this one then, so there are 3 recommendations, and again, as originally on strategy. However, before I get into the detail, our CFO set me a little bit of a challenge on this one, because actually one of the figures in the original strategy document is incorrect. So I'd like to point out that first of all. In the 2017-18 column, balances brought forward actually says 7434. This actually should be 10637. And then when you roll that forward to 2022-23, the figure there is, this is on the subtotal or non-earmarked reserves row. That should be 3530. Sorry, it is that, but actually what it should be is 6730, which actually is beneficial to the tune of 3203 to us. So hopefully that makes perfect sense for everybody. Basically, it's a small amendment to the table which we'd like to have noted, but it is working in our favour. And then basically the recommendations are set out the updated assumptions and proposals concerning the financial strategy and development of the 2018-19 budget preparation process, as set out in section 4 of the report, are approved. Obviously we have those amendments. The revised budget projections incorporated into the medium-term financial plan, as set out in table 5.1 appendix to the report, are approved. And finally, the draft proposal of the capital programme is detailed in section 6 and appendix C of the report be approved. I think that's covered everything in the amendment, so I'd like to recommend that to council.
Thank you. Go on, Councillor Paul.
Thank you, Chairman. Nothing further to add.
Anyone wishing to speak? Put that to the meeting. Are in favour of this?
Agreed.
Next item, SG 63 1701, Daventry Town Centre Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan and Conservation Area Designation. Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Chairman. This and the following item are very similar, Chairman. I think we might spend a bit more time on one than the second one, simply because of the similarity. The District Council does have a statutory duty under the 1990 Planning (Listed Buildings and Conservation Areas) Act to review its conservation areas and to designate new ones where they meet the appraisal criteria. This has been done in a draft proposal for a conservation area appraisal and management plan for Daventry Town Centre. This then went to consultation because of when it occurred, which was during the summer. It was extended from the normal 6 weeks to 8 weeks public consultation. That ended at the beginning of September, and 8 responses were received during the consultation period. The full details of those were in the report that went to strategy group. It was found that there were general support for the proposals and that respondents were generally satisfied with the information contained within the draft appraisal and proposed management plan. There was some dissatisfaction about failure to designate a conservation area in Drayton, but there was no material justification to include it. Respondents actually put forward 2 candidates for the local list. These are buildings which are effectively undesignated heritage assets. They're not capable of formal listing but are worth preserving. But unfortunately these 2 suggestions didn't meet the agreed criteria, so they weren't added to the list. Historic England, which we now got used to calling what used to be called English Heritage, didn't seek any changes, so they were supportive as well. In association with the consultation on the Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan, and there was a consultation on a Article 4 directions for Daventry Town Centre, but that is yet to be completed, and so the recommendation before you tonight, there are 6 recommendations. Firstly, that the proposed changes to the Daventry Town Centre Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan in response to representations as set out in the appendices to strategy group be approved. Secondly, that further minor editorial changes be made to reflect the fact that the document must now be in its final adopted form. Thirdly, that the revised Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan for Daventry Town Centre be adopted as a supplementary planning document. Fourthly, that the proposed conservation area boundary, as set out in the report, be designated, and that this supersedes the original boundary designated in 1997. Fifthly, that the local list entry for Daventry Town Centre be agreed, and finally, that further work be undertaken for a proposed Article 4 directions for Daventry Town Centre, and a further report be presented to strategy group in due course. I ask Council to approve the recommendations, Chairman.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Edding. Councillor Randall.
Yes, no, I think Councillor Chandler said it all.
Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just to make a note, really, that can everybody be aware who's in the conservation area, actually what that means. Because recently there have been some building works carried out in conservation areas that haven't come to planning, which I understand, my understanding is if you are in a conservation area, even trimming a hedge, it has to come forward. Is that correct? No? Of building works, if it's in a conservation area, does that? It's only that obviously things that have happened that are in a conservation area that haven't come through planning, and I'm concerned whether they actually know the process, and so could they be made aware of what this process is. Thank you.
Just for clarity, there are additional restrictions in conservation areas, as I pointed them, but there are trees, not hedges, in the case of vegetation, and that's simply due to give the council 6 weeks notice of any works, and the council doesn't intervene, works can proceed unaffected as far as trees are concerned. And in terms of giving notification, if council approves the recommendation, then all affected properties will be written to advise them of the new status.
We have a Councillor Ritchie.
I trust, Chair, that it will be noted in the minutes that only 8 people responded to this consultation. I'm going to be perfectly happy voting for the recommendation that has been made, but I feel that that is quite appalling, and I feel that that it needs to be referred back as to how do we actually go about being much more proactive in seeking people's views on an issue like this. Yes, for many people it may sound a terribly boring issue in which they're not going to take time to get involved, but they're important issues, and it is important that we engage with them in that. I think there is perhaps a case for us setting a minimum threshold of responses that we simply don't regard that there has been a response. You may have 1 or 2 good ideas amongst eight responses that you receive, but there is no way that you can regard that as being in any sense statistically representative of what people in Daventry think.
Speakers, Councillor Paul first.
Thank you.
Councillor
Chairman, thank you. I have empathy for Councillor Ritchie. However, we're not in Australia. We don't have to vote if we don't want to. We don't have to fill in reports if we don't want to. You can lead horses to water, etc., etc. I do agree with engaging with people, but we're using a tried and tested method. And short of stopping everybody in the street, I personally don't know what else to do. However, I do know that this was discussed at the Town Council, and the Town Council submitted a report. And as the Town Council strapline says, we speak for everybody. I think that's good enough. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. It's again, we would love more responses, more engagement from our community, but I think maybe there's an inference that we're not doing enough. I think that's a little bit unfair, an unfair inference to make. But one thing I think we need to push back on is the fact that we have a threshold and therefore discard those people that do respond, their voice, their opinions. We can't do that to the community. If people have the bother to actually respond, we should listen to that response and give it respect and also take note of it. So with regard to thresholds, I think that's quite a dangerous road to go down, because we then start not listening, and surely that's not the path we should be taking.
Councillor
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, on the back of Councillor Organ's comments, which I fully support, I think it's important to realise, in my experience, when people want to engage in a process, it's normally because they feel they have a need to do so. And sometimes it can be down to apathy that they don't. Normally, in my experience, it's when people think it's going to affect their local area, and they don't like it normally. That's when you do get people responding, then you'll get the full responses coming in. So we live in a democracy where people have a choice to respond. The clear thing is we're given that opportunity. It's up to them to take it, Chairman. We can't force people to actually respond. And as I said again, if they think it's important to them, they tend to respond. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor French.
Thank you, Chair. Taking up Councillor Miller's point, I actually think it's slightly not the case, because some people don't always know there's a consultation on, and as can be demonstrated when I talk later on Alston Parish Council, many residents weren't aware that there was a consultation because it was purely online, and they get bad broadband, and many of them aren't computer literate. So I do agree that there should be a better, more effective method of consultation. Alston did propose one, which was apparently turned down by Daventry, which was that they would distribute a letter, so there'd be no cost to this council of actually consulting in a slightly more old-fashioned way. So I think we need to look very carefully, and perhaps it's something scrutiny should be looking at again and making some serious recommendations on. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm just a bit interested in that because I share the view that it is always disappointing when you see so little response to consultation exercise. I think there are two comments I would make in response to what's been said already. I don't think it's at all sensible, feasible to introduce the idea of a minimum threshold below which responses don't count. What I do think is that more effort needs to be made by a number of people to ensure that people are aware of what's going on and that their consultation does genuinely invite their input. For example, in the case of a parish, we've had a number of conservation area reviews since the resource became available. We've been waiting for a very long time to do this work. The resource became available, and so we've made great strides doing this work with a number of parishes. A parish council has a responsibility to keep its people informed of what's going on. So it's no good a parish council coming back and saying the people didn't know, the parish council knew, and they could have told the people. For some reason, they didn't. So, yes, there may well be some value in looking at the whole process of consultation, but we will need to be guided very carefully by some of those thoughts that we've heard. I won't read them out again, Chairman, but I put the 6 recommendations to Council for approval.
Yeah, it just occurred to me, Chairman, that obviously one of the areas we have done very well on is the neighbourhood plan process, where communities, in my experience, are really engaged in that. You get a good turnout when it comes to the referendum. Normally they do get engaged in the process in the early stage and see it through, and they vote at the end. So there are ways of doing it. So I think maybe it's going back to the point Adam Brown's team may look at, is how can we make sure we engage more people when we go out to consult. It has to be relevant to them, that's the key thing. And in the neighbourhood plans cases, it is relevant to a village, the future of their planning processes in that village or their plans for that village. And I think, again, that's the key. Make it relevant, they will engage. But you have to make the point, quite right, that they have to know about it. So I set that for them.
Councillor Osborne.
Chairman, I have to say that I was looking at parish council bits the other day, and Long Butley's been consulted on its conservation areas. And that's happening in the summer. But a group come out from Daventry, and you can go along and you can talk about it. And incidentally, they're consulting at the moment in my village on important green spaces, which they will do on everybody's village. And I was talking to a person at 5 o'clock tonight after the consultation, after a group had been out from this council, hired a hall, and the whole of the village can come. They knew about it, and 6 people had turned up in 3 hours, which for a village of a population of 5,000, I don't think is fantastic. Did they know about it? Yes, they did know about it, Chairman. But not many people turned up about it.
Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a meeting tomorrow with one of the management team, and what I do, I'll bring in sort of maybe we can communicate back with the parishes via email, and let the parishes decide how much they want to communicate that to the residents. Thank you.
Well, another good airing. We've got a proposer and a seconder.
Agreed.
To the meeting.
Agreed.
Let's move on to SG 631702, Brixworth Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan and Conservation Area Designation. Councillor Chan.
Thank you, Chairman. I won't remind members what I said earlier about why we're doing this. It's perhaps to point out that, again, there was an 8-week consultation because of the summer holiday period. It's normally 6 weeks. In this case, 12 responses were received, and those responses are available in the members' room and were presented to the strategy group. As a result of those responses, the document was revised and is now presented to Council. And we have the same list of 6 recommendations. I will read them again to remind you so that we can see that they apply to Brixworth. That the proposed changes to Brixworth Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan in response to representations be approved. That further minor editorial changes be made to the Brixworth Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan, including to reflect the fact that the document will be in its final adopted form. That then the revised Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan for Brixworth be adopted as a supplementary planning document. That the proposed conservation area boundary as set out in the report be designated, and this supersedes an earlier one of 2000. That the local list for Brixworth set out in the report be agreed, and as before, further work be undertaken for a proposed Article 4 direction for Brixworth, and that this further report will come back via strategy group in due course. And can I remind you that, as Simon Bowles pointed out earlier, if this is all approved, properties directly affected by the conservation area will be informed.
Is there a seconder for this? Councillor Parker. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Parker?
Yes, please, Chair. Yes, I support this. I think from some of the comments of the previous one, the officer came out to the parish council, explained everything to them. It was tweeted that night several times, whatever that is. It was informed to various people and everything else like that. Went in various magazines. So I think people did know about it. Obviously, it's nice to know 12 people came back in the village as opposed to 8 in the town. The main concern seemed to reside around people not quite understanding various things, like what Article 4 is, things like that. I'm pleased to say that even this week some of the residents was writing in to the officer, and the officer came back very clear about what each item was, what trees they could take down, the heights, hedges, roofs and everything like that. So I think there was a little bit of misunderstanding, shall we say. I'm also led to believe that the site, Brixworth, it's Daventry actually, sorry. Daventry site has been updated with some more information now, so that will help. So I will support this. And just like to thank Brianne Morgan for work in this area and for helping me out considerably. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important as well we just note the 12 responses, because I think the point about consultation is quite important. But I think we also need to recognise that one of those respondents was on behalf of the group called Brixworth Neighbourhood Development Plan Steering Group, which is a group of active residents that have put forward a single response. So it isn't a single response, but it is actually from that group of people, and therefore multiply by a factor of 2 or 3 in terms of the people who've been consulted, met regularly and provided feedback. I think as well we should also note the response from Berries on behalf of the DM Wood Trust, which is a principal landowner and property owner within the conservation area of Brixworth. That says, and I quote from their report, that these measures would strengthen the protection of the character of the village and help to ensure that any new development will both be in keeping with and enhance its surroundings. And I think the key thing to remember there about the character is there is a Saxon church, the oldest Saxon church in the country, the oldest Saxon church west of the Urals there, and we as a council need to be active in protecting the environment around that national monument. It's not just a village monument, it's not just a district, it's a national monument. So I commend this proposal to the council and ask you to vote in favour.
Thank you. Have a proposer, have a seconder, all in favour?
Agreed.
And then we move on to SG 63 1703, Crick Village Neighbourhood Development Plan. Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Chairman. You'll be pleased to know this is the last item I have to introduce. We've done very well as a district in encouraging communities to take part in the neighbourhood development plan process. This is yet another one, Crick Village Neighbourhood Development Plan Group. They have worked very hard and produced a neighbourhood development plan which has gone through a number of consultation exercises and various feedback exercises associated with that. And they got to the point where it was submitted for examination. The plan has been examined by an independent examiner who has agreed that the plan does conform with the requirements. It meets the basic conditions. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a sound plan. That's not part of the process. But I'm sure it is. So that means that the recommendation before you tonight is that we note and welcome the significant progress in making the neighbourhood development plan by Crick community, that the examiner's recommended modifications in respect of the neighbourhood development plan are accepted. They're largely technical in the wording. That the examiner's recommendation that the neighbourhood development plan as modified in accordance with the previous recommendation should proceed to a referendum of voters within the Crick Village neighbourhood area, and that subject to that being approved, the proposed decision statement set out in the appendix to the report, subject to any necessary factual alterations, be agreed, and that the cost of the referendum be met from the earmark reserved for neighbourhood planning. The referendum is recommended to take place in the 25th of January 2018.
Do you have a second? Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. As their representative, I would like to second this. And with particular reference to recommendation 1, we've worked very hard on this plan.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Fine. Are we all in agreement with this recommendation?
We get through this one.
Then we move on to agenda item number 9, Molten Artificial Football Pitch. Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chairman. The recommendation you have in front of you, as was stated, concerns molten 3G artificial football pitch. It recommends that the District Council provides additional funding of 76k towards this. In the introduction, you can see what was approved at full council meeting on the 30th of July 2015. This was part of an overall project cost of 650k, with the FA and others providing the remaining funding. An agreement was put in place to the Malton Parish Council. And it's worth noting that, in my opinion, Malton Parish Council are a forward and progressive council. And Malton Magpies Football Club, which is excellently run. They work hard in the community, well regarded by the FA. They provide football for seniors, juniors, women and girls, and also other activities. I would cast you back to item 4.1, which discusses the project and the cause of the problem. And there's no doubt about, in the report it says the project cost has increased. You can't doubt that. Most of this increase has been met, but there is a 36k shortfall. This is where the recommendation comes into effect. The Malton Parish Council providing reimbursement. And I would mention to members that in the report it does not give a repayment period. And this was because there were meetings still going on, and it would be wrong to put something in there until we knew what was happening. I am pleased to confirm that the agreement has been confirmed that repayment will be made by the end of 2022. Finally, I want to refer to item 6, the conclusion. And this is very important. There is potential to help secure a valuable community facility at Malton and contribute towards the Council's corporate objectives for health and well-being. I think something we should all support. So I ask your support on this. The Ward Council and Councillors Warren and Cribbiam have also been very involved, backed and supported the Parish Council, and I commend the work they've done on this. And they always promote their community. So I think, quite frankly, they deserve your support as well. So I recommend it to you all and say, let's support it. Thank you.
Councillor Watt. Second that.
Councillor Lomax.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'd like to ask a question, and that is, having read the report, I do feel that there may have been some, that this should have been anticipated better than it has been, and I would like to ask, first of all, about that, whether the risk assessment in relation to it was actually quite satisfactory from the point of view of everybody involved, because this is a very big sum of money. I am not against doing recommendation at all, but the second thing I want to say is in fact a comment. We spent a lot of money on football in the last year or so. Obviously it's a very important and indeed very popular sport, and I'm glad to see that women's football is increasing in popularity and in participation. However, I do think we need to look as a council at other sports. It's not the only sport that there is. I know that we've put money into the theatre centre and that's supporting gymnastics, but we've also seen the hockey teams in our district dispossessed of their facilities. And I do think that we need to be looking very closely at the other sports. There are many sports which are well supported in terms of participation for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just asked Simon Bowers to comment on the first part of Councillor Lomax's position, and then I'll come back if I may, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, reading through the report, I just think it was about the securing NCC's agreement on the basis of the drainage design. I can't understand this section actually of how they thought they'd secured it, and actually didn't. So obviously this seems to be this lack of securing what the NCC was going to do has incurred this extra cost. And the other thing that I'm just looking at, it did say the overall project cost was 650k, and there's been an increase of 171k, making it 297. And I don't think those figures quite add up, because from 650k to 897k, I believe is 247k, not 171. I'm a bit confused with those figures. That would make it a lot shorter. Oh, right, okay. Oh, right, okay, sure.
I think Councillor Randall's query's been answered, so
Thank you.
you deal with Councillor Lomax's. In terms of risk assessment of the project originally, I think the council, this council, did everything reasonable at that stage. We were acting as essentially a grant funder, not as a project promoter. And to be honest, to investigate the detail of knowing where the football club was currently draining to would have been beyond the sensible due diligence of any grant funder in such circumstances. So I don't think it would be reasonable to have done more at that stage.
Yeah, I just asked Councillor Simon Bowles on that, because I know he was very heavily engaged in consultations with the parish council, etc., as were the ward councillors, and these things creep up on us. The fact is, this is where we're at. And I would take on what Councillor Lomax says about all sports. I'm currently engaged with doing a big promotion on bowls in Daventry, so I cover all sports. The hockey situation was firmly discussed. There was a meeting with officers, and I understand that this has been now rectified and accepted. We have to encourage all sports, and I know Councillor Lomax is particularly keen on disabled sports, and that is another area where we come from. So I can assure her that anything to do with sport, then I'm up for it if we can do it. And I talk not just to football clubs, and when we talk about Malton Magpies, that is not just a football club. They do a hell of a lot within the community, as I think the two ward councils will bear out. And I've been to several events of theirs. They've got a benchmark from the Football Association. They have a hall there that is used also by the community at times. So they do a lot of work within the community. This will make a big difference to them. It will also help with other sports. As with the sports park, it's not solely intended for football. You can use it for rugby, you can use it for athletics. There's lots of things you can use these fields for. So we have to make the best use of them. We have to talk to all these sports. I will do that, and I will continue to do that as long as I hold this portfolio. Thank you.
Councillor Griffin.
Thank you, Chairman. I looked at the report and I see forward funding for 300k is to be repaid in planning obligations. And I also see that the 76,000 will also come back, and that will come back from the parish council over time. So we're only forward funding. This money is all going to come back to us.
Yes.
So I think we're very lucky to be in a position to do that and support this project.
Thank you. We've got a proposition, we've got a seconder. All in agreement?
Agreed.
Thank you. We then move on to agenda item 10, annual report of the Corporate Governance Committee. Councillor Bunting.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure you've all read the report and have been enthralled by it. Corporate governance is one of the most exciting, stimulating subjects that you could possibly do. But as a result of that, to keep you all appraised of how exciting it is, we have to produce you an annual report of that excitement. And you will see the range of activities that the committee has undertaken. I'm sure you will join with the committee members in full debates around internal audit and risk management. However, on a serious note, this report is presented to Council to ensure that you know we are scrutinising the work and activities of the council in an appropriate way against the terms of reference set, which include working with our external auditors and external contractors to ensure that the probity and conduct of the council is maintained, and I am pleased to reassure you all that it is. As such, I commend the report to you and will take any questions as necessary, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Councillor?
Yes, Chairman.
Report has been recommended. Proposed, seconded. Councillor Miller.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank Councillor Bunting on behalf of the Corporate Governance Committee for the work we do. I have to say the report was, actually, I did read it to Councillor Bunting. It's not my normal night time reading. But I just want to highlight one sentence there, which I thought should give comfort to all members, where you say the control environment and governance framework remains in good health. So, you know, thanks very much indeed for that, confirming that. And wish your hope the committee continues in the year ahead. You do excellent work. Thank you.
I can note that then. All agree?
Agreed.
Moving on then to item 11, schedule of council and committee meetings 2018-19, page 81 to 84. Do I have your agreement with that schedule? Agreement. Thank you. Item 12. To note the following appointments. To appoint Councillor Colin Morgan as the Resources Portfolio Holder, replacing Councillor John Shepherd. To appoint Councillor Adam Brown as the Scrutiny and Improvement Committee Chairman, replacing Councillor Colin Morgan. 3. To appoint Councillor Mark Wesley to the resulting vacancy on the Scrutiny and Improvement. Could I have a proposer?
Happy to propose
Councillor Ward. And a seconder. Councillor Osborne. All in favour? Sorry.
I don't know if I'm actually asking for debate or merely for information. I just feel there is something that is unclear about the processes that we actually use. At the start of the last strategy group meeting, Councillor Miller, as the chair of the meeting, gave apologies on behalf of Councillor Morgan and went on to explain, as it says in the minutes, that it was proposed that Councillor Morgan was about to become a portfolio holder. Actually, at the meeting, Councillor Miller mentioned that the appointment would be effectively from that time. Those are the words that Councillor Miller used. Now, I just thought that that was surprising, and it led me to look at our constitution to see what it says about portfolio holders, how they are appointed, and so on. The constitution is 200 and something pages, and in it I could only find 5 sort of passing references to portfolio holders. Members are allowed to ask questions of them at council meetings. They are required to be nice to each other and senior officers. The chief executive is required to consult with the portfolio holder for housing and health on certain orders concerning disposal of properties or something like that. Very, very special circumstances. The only one that gives some guidance is a table that suggests that the strategy group shall have 12 members, which shall include portfolio holders. Now, to me, that leaves open the question. Does it mean, you could interpret that as meaning, that, that portfolio holders must be chosen from the members of the strategy group? Or you could interpret it as saying that, okay, that those who are made portfolio holder members are automatically members of the strategy group. You, of course, need to make some changes in the size of the strategy group. But I do feel that things like that should be clarified. Now, and from murmurs, I get the impression that most seem to take the view that what the wording means is that if you make somebody a portfolio holder, you make them a member of the strategy group. Sorry, a member of the strategy group. Beg your pardon. Our articles say that the full council, and only the full council, shall determine the composition of committees and make appointments to them. It was not, if that is the case, then I'm afraid that Councillor Miller was acting rather unconstitutionally at the strategy group meeting. And if that is the case, then I don't see how we can look here and say that we note things. We can't note things that have not actually happened. Surely the wording of what is in front of us should be concerned with what appointments we are have been recommended to this body. The idea is that they're simply there for ratification. I don't feel is in accordance with our constitution. I feel that there are shortcuts that have been taken here. If it would be helpful, I would be very happy to move that we ensure that these people are not just portfolio holders, but that we confirm that they are appointed to the strategy group. While on the issue, the two other sort of quick points I would like to ask about. One I would like to ask about, and that is at our last meeting. There was a reference to Councillor Longley shadowing Councillor Poole in his role as portfolio holder. Well, there is nothing in our constitution that explains what that means. Of course, we might have informal arrangements whereby people shadow each other to simply in the interest of making sure that the workload is shared and there are other people who are being brought to bear on decisions that need to be taken. However, if we actually agreed it at a council meeting, it should surely mean something. And yet there is no definition at all of what this actually means. I just feel that if we have such an arrangement that is approved by the council and therefore has got a certain status, it should not be left as vague. And I think it raises questions too, that I understand that Councillor Longley, in another capacity, has got a part-time role as a portfolio holder, or the equivalent post with the county council. Should we not have rules that ensure that there are no conflicts of interests that might arise? My final comment that I would like to make after a discussion that we had at our last council meeting, and after a question that was put to the leader of the council this evening, I was delighted to find that in all the 200 and whatever it is pages of the Constitution, throughout our constituents are referred to as citizens and not as customers.
Chair, thank you. Might it be appropriate for corporate governance, if you note to my last report under section C, that we look at the endorsed changes to the council's constitution, that under part 5B of the constitution, it talks about the role and function of officers, strategy group, etc. That the corporate governance committee take away the challenge, quite rightly given by our colleague, and review that in terms of what portfolio holders do or don't do and how they're appointed, and we'll come back to council and with a short paragraph of how it works.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can sort of address Councillor Ritchie's points in reverse order. Councillor Malcolm Longley shadowed Councillor Colin Poole as the Economic Regeneration Employment Portfolio Holder, was a point for information. There is no formal role as a shadow of a portfolio holder. In respect of the appointments of portfolio holders, There is reference in the Constitution under the duties of the leader of the council to appoint appropriate elected members to each portfolio, and in that sense, the portfolio holders, as pointed out in section 5 of the Constitution, become members of strategy group. The purpose of the item on the agenda today is to confirm those appointments.
Thank you. Councillor Miller.
Now, I'm very, very happy to see that Councillor Ritchie takes a keen interest in this matter, because actually the point here is the Constitution, by the way, it's only one portfolio holder actually going on to strategy group for its appointments. One is Street Improvement Chair, and the other one is actually a member joining the Street Improvement Committee. But the Constitution is, it says, doesn't allow me to make that appointment, and the Council endorses that. And also all appointments are done that way. But obviously, I appreciate when you decide to make a change in your group, if you have a new group leader, for instance, that will come back to Council Swan the same way to note that appointment.
Thank you.
Not saying it will happen, by the way.
Thank you for that little bit of, I wouldn't necessarily call it clarification. I think that we have got to be clear that it is the council, and that means all of us here at a meeting such as this one, that actually makes the leader of a group may make recommendations. They make recommendations on the knowledge, the full knowledge of what is going to happen. But it is Article 4 point something of our Constitution makes it perfectly clear that it is the full council and only the full council. And therefore, if there is going to be any sort of change, it is not simply a question of ratification, it is a matter of effectively a motion being put to a meeting such as this for a vote.
Okay. Tony Gillette first, and I'll take Councillor Brown. Councillor Roberts.
Just a quick word, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. I just confirm the point that I made earlier, that under the duties of the leader of the council, there is a duty to appoint appropriate members to each portfolio. I think just moving on in a more general point and taking up Councillor Bunting's point, we are due a review of the Constitution next in May, and it seems that there may be some way that we can make it a little bit more clear to this.
Councillor Brown.
Chairman, I think Tony said the point that I was going to make fairly clearly. I managed to find the relevant section of the Constitution on the PDF quite quickly. It's under Part 7, under Leader of the Council, duties 2.3, portfolio holders and committee chairs. Duties of the Leader of the Council include to designate the appropriate portfolios, to appoint appropriate elected members to each portfolio, to nominate committee chairs. It's all in there, Mr. Chairman. I think members took the time to read the Constitution more carefully. They come to a quicker understanding.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Basically, Councillor Brown has answered the question that wasn't really a question. We're arguing about one word here, note or confirm.
Yeah. Well, to note the following appointments then, we've had proposed, we've had seconded. All in agreement?
Agreed.
Any again? Now we come to item 13, which are the pink papers, and this point.